Carbon dioxide from the atmosphere gets into living things through photosynthesis. That's what plants do. They take it out of the atmosphere and put it in their bodies.
This is respiration.
Respiration is putting it back into the atmosphere. That's the reverse.
Yeah, we need to listen.
That's what you're doing right now as you breathe out. You're breathing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It comes from the plants that you ate, or the animals that you ate that ate the plants.
And the transfer of energy.
Yeah. Those molecules are being torn out by your mitochondrions, and you're breathing out the CO2. There goes some of it. There's some more.
You could, like,
Trillions of molecules.
CO2.
I got a lot of
color.
molecules too.
Now this is the nitrogen cycle. And your molecules also have nitrogen. You know what molecule in you has a lot of nitrogen in it? There's a couple of them. Not your bones. What? It's one of the types of organic molecules. There's actually two types that have a lot of nitrogen. Nucleic acids have a lot of nitrogen. Do y'all remember DNA?
Yes.
Y'all remember DNA? What was one of these called?
I mean, a nucleotide?
That's a nucleotide. Do you remember a nucleotide has a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base?
Yeah.
Nitrogen? There's nitrogen all in your DNA. There's also nitrogen in your proteins. The amino group, amino acids, the amino group has a nitrogen in it. So your proteins and your DNA have a lot of nitrogen. Where does it come from?
The air.
The nitrogen that you have in your molecules starts in the air. It starts in the air as nitrogen gas. What percentage of the air do you think is nitrogen gas?
That's 81.
81?
7%.
7?
I'm going to go with
0.2?
the majority.
76?
67.
67?
70.
0.3.
70? Y'all are close. It's about 78.5. About 78, 79% of the air is nitrogen. Most of this is nitrogen. That's something most people don't know. They think the air is oxygen. No, only about 20% is oxygen. About 79% of the air is nitrogen. And so can you just breathe in that nitrogen and it becomes part of your molecules? No. Nitrogen exists in the atmosphere as a molecule called N2. And N2 consists of two nitrogen atoms that are triple bonded to one another. And that bond is so tight that you can't break it apart. There's only one group of organisms in the world that have evolved a way to tear apart atmospheric nitrogen. You know what they're called?
Plants.
Nope.
Mosses.
Mosses can't do it either. Mosses are plants.
Oh, earthworms?
Bacteria. Do it, Adam. Bacteria can do it. And this arrow shows it right here. A lot of the atmospheric nitrogen comes to the soil, and bacteria in the soil tear apart the nitrogens and add them to hydrogen and oxygen. So they go from two nitrogens bonded to one another to a molecule called ammonia, or a molecule called nitrite, or a molecule called nitrate. Bacteria can tear this molecule up into these three things. And then plants can absorb those from the soil.
Could you add those separately?
And then, you know how we get them? You know how we get our nitrogen?
Plants absorb it.
The plants absorb it from the soil, but how do we get it?
Eating the plants.
We eat the plants. So it has to first go through bacteria, which break it into a form plants can use. Then it's absorbed by plants, and the plants grow and make the DNA and make the proteins. Then we eat the plants. Or we eat animals that ate the plants. That's how we get our nitrogen. So the DNA, the nitrogen that was part of the DNA in your body, was once in the air. And it got pulled down by bacteria and torn up, pulled up by plants, and then you ate the plants. And it became part of you. Isn't that a cool long journey that nitrogen makes?
And then it goes back.
Now it can go back. There are bacteria that convert it back into that goes to the atmosphere. We call that process denitrification. It's called nitrogen fixation when the bacteria pull the atmospheric nitrogen out, and it's called denitrification when the bacteria put the atmospheric nitrogen back.
Why would they do that?
That's a good question. So here's why they do it. Bacteria need oxygen, just like other organisms. Some bacteria need the oxygen,
Like aerobic.
and they will grab that oxygen,
From nitrite?
and they'll pull it off, and you'll just be left with the end, and it'll stick to another end. And so they're doing it to get the oxygen.
Do we know how they break down the nitrogen into the 3 different groups?
Yeah, it's a complicated chemical process, but we know how it works.
Have they replicated it before?
Yeah, it can be replicated in factories and stuff. Factories that make fertilizers do that. They take nitrogen out of the air and fix it and make fertilizer out of it.
There is another organism that can do it.
Humans. William, that's very
Well,
thought-provoking. Yeah.
So NO2 is nitrate? And
NO2 is called nitrite, NO3 is called nitrate, NH3 is called ammonia.
So they could break down NO3 too, correct?
They could, yeah, they could break down NO2 or NO3 to get the oxygen. Ammonia?
Oh, is that what it's called?
You ever heard of ammonia?
No, I'm just...
AMO.
You never heard of ammonia, like they used to clean floors and stuff?
No, I
Ammonia, like when you get sick.
That's pneumonia.
Not pneumonia. Ammonia.
Wait, Mr. Willis, is
NH3 is also called ammonia.
Is NO2 nitrate?
NO2 is nitrite, NO3 is nitrate. All you have to know is that bacteria make all 3 of these things from this. They'll directly make this, and then they'll indirectly make those. That's not the important thing. The important thing is bacteria that get the nitrogen out of the atmosphere. No other organism has evolved the ability to do that. Yes,
What about humans?
except for humans, right?
With biological
With machines.
processes. Other animals.
All right. Oh, do you want to see video footage of the nitrogen cycle?
Yes, sir.
Heck yeah. Video footage of the nitrogen cycle. Maybe I ask a question about it afterward?
Nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen
Oh.
is an essential constituent of
This is not a good video.
You watched the one with the whale in it?
Yeah.
What? It was a whale.
I don't know if it's
nitrogen. Atomic number 7 on the periodic table is an essential element to life on Earth, as it plays a major role in building structures and molecules we need to survive. Nitrogen exists in many different forms, which are all interrelated in one of the most important biogeochemical processes on our planet, the nitrogen cycle. Most nitrogen exists as nitrogen gas in our atmosphere, but it can also be found dissolved in the ocean. For most organisms, the triple bond in nitrogen gas is hard to break, but not for certain bacteria, which can break the bond and add hydrogen to create ammonium. This ammonium can be taken up by some species of microscopic plants
Wait, isn't that
called
NH4?
phytoplankton.
Mr. Willis?
For those who can't use the nitrogen in ammonium,
Yeah,
Is that NH4 or?
it's NH4. It's an ion of ammonia.
So
It's called ammonium.
They break the
bacteria
nitrogen.
take the ammonium and add oxygen, creating first nitrite and then nitrate in a process called nitrification. This nitrate can then be used by other species of phytoplankton. Larger organisms such as fish and whales take in nitrogen by eating these phytoplankton. Eventually, both the plankton and the animals will die, and sink to the ocean floor, where they will be decomposed by bacteria into ammonia for continued use in the cycle. Usually, the nitrogen cycle functions very well on its own. However, humans have had an impact beyond nature's capacity. Chemists have developed fertilizers which fix unusable nitrogen into a usable version, which is good for farmers, but not if they use too much. This leftover fertilizer gets swept into groundwater, lakes, and rivers, and eventually makes its way to the ocean. All this extra nitrogen overwhelms the cycle and depletes the oxygen in the ocean. A lack of oxygen dramatically affects the ecology and fisheries of the affected region, as fish and other animals need to breathe oxygen to survive. Additionally, humans add a large amount of nitrous oxide into the atmosphere through various practices such as emissions from automobiles, home furnaces, factories, and power plants. The more nitrogen that gets released into the atmosphere means more gets washed down in rainstorms and overwhelms the balance of the nitrogen cycle. So, what can we do to minimize our impact? We can develop better farming practices so less fertilizer makes its way into our water sources. As individuals, we can limit our emissions by turning off lights and appliances to save electricity, turning down our heating and cooling systems, and finding alternate methods of transportation and energy. All of these small actions add up to make a big impact and help keep Mother Nature running for many years to come.
That was good. Glad you decided you wanted to do that. Okay, that's the nitrogen cycle. 10 points. If you could tell me what organisms have the ability to remove nitrogen from the atmosphere and make it into usable compounds for living things.
You want?
Hey.
Yes, orange is correct. Green is correct. Yellow is correct. Pink's correct. Anyone else?
Plane's coming. We have
Going. White's correct. Purple's correct. Bacteria. Bacteria can do that. All right, let me ask you a harder one. What is the process called that causes nitrogen to go from bacteria back into the atmosphere? What's that process called? Nitrogen to go from bacteria back into the atmosphere.
Is that it? No.
That was a tougher one.
That's so wrong.
Some questions are harder than others. Pink correct.
It's two different things.
That's
for
Green incorrect.
Not mine is the same thing.
Orange correct.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
Yellow correct.
Shut up.
White incorrect. Anyone else? Purple incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a harder one. Here's the answer. It's called denitrification. Denitrification puts it back into the atmosphere. Nitrogen fixation brings it out of the
Is that called
atmosphere.
nitrification?
Nitrification is changing it from one form to another. Changing it from NH4 to NO2 and NO3. That's nitrification.
Nitrification.
All right, last cycle, the phosphorus cycle. There's also a lot of phosphorus in your body. Your bones have a high amount of phosphorus. DNA has phosphorus, sugar, phosphate, nitrogen base. Remember phosphate, phosphorus? ATP has a lot of phosphorus. What's ATP stand for?
Adenosine
Adenosine triphosphate. Guess what? Triphosphate. That's 3 phosphates. ATP has a lot of phosphate. Where does the phosphate come from? That's in your bodies, in your DNA, in your ATP? Well, it doesn't come from the atmosphere. There's no phosphorus in the atmosphere. None. So where does it come from? It comes from the rocks. Rocks have a lot of phosphorus.
Did they originally?
And the rock, yeah, all the rocks on the planet got a bunch of phosphorus in it, in their makeup. And when they erode, some of the phosphorus gets into the soil. And the plants pull that phosphate up into their bodies and make molecules out of it, like DNA and ATP. And so do you know where you get your phosphorus from?
Water.
Plants.
You eat the plants. You eat the plants. The plants have got the phosphate from the ground. You eat the plants. You get the phosphate from the plants. So when the plants die and the animals die, their bodies decompose and the phosphate goes back into the ground, and it just cycles. It goes from the soil into the food webs, then back to the soil, and it just cycles around and around and around. Some of it ends up in the water and dissolved in the ocean water.
What's aerosol?
Aerosol means the phosphorus can, for a short period of time, get in the atmosphere if it's blown out of a volcano.
Is that how the Big
We
Bang?
call it an aerosol, but it quickly settles out.
What about aerosol cans?
That means it's spraying stuff into the air that quickly settle out. But yes?
So when the Big Bang occurred, or was the phosphorus just?
Yeah, all the molecules are produced by stars.
Okay.
The Big Bang produced mainly hydrogen and some helium, but those formed the first stars, and the stars made all the other elements.
And
You need to
phosphorus.
take astronomy, phosphorus included. It's made inside a star. That's where all of our molecules originated from. The inside of a star. You got to take astronomy to learn about that process, but it's cool. You want to see phosphorus cycle video?
Yes, sir.
Video footage of the phosphorus cycle.
Let's talk about the phosphorus
Don't tell me
cycle,
right
a nutrient cycle also known as the sedimentary cycle.
Phosphorus. Phosphorus is a poisonous combustible nonmetal commonly used in fireworks, explosives, matches, toothpaste, and fertilizers. In the natural environment, phosphorus is commonly found in water, soil, and sediments, but is also an important building block for animals and plants. Humans have phosphorus in their bones and teeth, energy storage molecules, and cell membrane fats. In the phosphorus cycle, processes like weathering cause phosphorus to move slowly from rock formations and ocean sediments to the soil, where plants absorb it. Animals get phosphorus by eating these plants, or other plant-eating animals. Decomposition of animals and plants returns phosphorus to soils and oceans. High phosphorus levels make plants grow more quickly, so farmers use phosphorus-rich fertilizers in agriculture. However, this fertilizer runs off into nearby lakes, rivers, and oceans, increasing phosphorus concentration and causing environmental problems like algal bloom. The phosphorus cycle varies from other nutrient cycles because it does not extend to the atmosphere and is a slower overall process.
Yay! You like that one?
Let's talk
That was
about the
really
phosphorus
fast.
cycle.
You like it?
That video could be 3 minutes long.
Not enough to see it twice?
That's like guided by.
So, one thing they didn't tell you, or that I didn't tell you, was if you get too much phosphorus running off into the water, you can get what's called an algae bloom. Algae in the water use the phosphorus to grow. And suddenly you get huge amounts of algae in the waters. And when they die, they decompose, and all the oxygen gets used up in the decomposition process, and the waters become oxygen depleted. And then all the fish leave the area because they need oxygen. So you end up with what's called a dead zone. Dead zones, this is a map showing where dead zones are.
There's one right here.
And there's one near here. And these aren't always there. They only appear at certain times, usually at times when there's a lot of rainfall and a lot of runoff of these agricultural fertilizers. But it causes these algae blooms, and then it causes the depletion of the oxygen, and the fish leave. And it's been a real problem. It's been getting worse, and it happens when phosphorus and nitrogen too, when these fertilizers get too much runoff. And you can see areas in the world where there's a lot of farming. The Mississippi River brings down a whole lot of this runoff and empties it into the Gulf, and you end up with these dead zones. And it's really bad for fisheries. It's another problem that kind of humans have created by so much agriculture, so much farming, and so much fertilizer. One way we're trying to fix that problem is developing plants that don't need so much fertilizer. Some plants, through genetic engineering, we're making plants that can make their own fertilizer, and they don't have to be fertilized. They can have bacteria living in them that can help them fix nitrogen and things like that. So it's a problem we're working on, but that's something you might hear about through your life. Dead zones due to agricultural runoff. At times, yeah, it can be real bad there.
I just think Africa doesn't report theirs. There must be like one.
That could be, or they don't have the fertilizers in great amounts like we do. That's probably more what it is. All right, so make sure you read this chapter. It's just one day for this chapter. Willis out.